Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and distinguished guests, I'm so happy to be able to welcome you all here to our opening conference of the Center for Global Migration Study Research at the Göttingen University, which we have been awaiting for quite a long time. I'm Sabine Hess, I'm a trained cultural anthropologist and I'm a founding member of this center. The official document institutionalizing us as a 35th center of this university is very, very fresh. In fact, it just reached us last week. We even didn't know really if we could, promote our conference with this label, having the opening conference of the center. But yeah, we did, we could. And together with 76 colleagues of over more than 6 faculties, we started to plan the center in the wake of the so-called European refugee crisis in 2015. But if we look around in the media and the world, it seems that migration as a global challenge is still as troubling and challenging societies and science alike as it was 3 years ago. In this respect, now welcoming you to this 3 days multi-topical, multi- and trans-regional, as well as highly interdisciplinary conference is a great honor and only possible because of this broad and transdisciplinary support and determination of all the persons involved in setting up the center and the conference. As one important step to deepen our interdisciplinary exchange to learn from each other's regional expertise and competence. And in fact, it has already triggered and made possible new research collaborations and interesting new debates here at the Göttingen campus. Now having this chance with this conference to broaden our perspective even more by having you as honorable speakers here to share with us your international perspectives, research findings and approaches in our 14 panels and 2 roundtable discussions is even more exciting, and I would wish to be able to split myself as to have the chance to attend all of the different panels put together by our members of the center. Insofar, I wish us all an interesting and inspiring conference, new contacts and appointments when we see us again, as we can be highly sure that we, as migration researchers, don't get jobless so soon, as the legal, political, social, cultural, economical, as well as environmental questions that come along with migration in a world of national organized states and societies seem to be still pressing, as very recently the Vice President of the EU Committee, Frans Timmermans, also put it. He affirmed us, quote, "This migration issue will not go away," he was saying, "not today, not tomorrow, not next year, not for a decade, not for 2 decades. This is a global phenomenon that will be with us for generations." Frans Timmermans, and he must know it. But if we look at the very recent numbers of the UN, that the UN has released at its World Refugee Day yesterday, and it was just by occasion that today is our opening conference, but it matches quite nicely, I think. The UN is saying that the numbers of people on the move by force is still rising and put together a number of 68 million this year. This not only means an increase within the last 2 years of around 3 million people, but it also means that this uprooted population is nearly as big as the population of France. On the other hand, the numbers of people arriving in Europe is decreasing sharply. These figures not only point to the fact that the, so to speak, the burden of integration are still highly unequally distributed across the globe, whereas regional migration regimes are seemingly competing with each other in respect of more restrictive solutions. Insofar, having set up this migration center as a center on global migration research is a first reflexive scientific move and statement in a situation where renationalization and forms of exclusionism of all sorts are high on the political agenda. Insofar, I'm especially looking forward to our two roundtable discussions with well-experienced international migration researchers and political experienced practitioners. But before we will start with the first roundtable, we from the Center would like to introduce to you very shortly the main pillars of the Center. Additionally, I have the pleasure to welcome Andreas Pott, member of the board of the National Council of Migration and director of the first and oldest migration research institute in Germany, the CeMig at Osnabrück, as well as our Vice President, Mrs. Caspar-Hehne, for some welcoming remarks. But first of all, let me introduce to you Hans Kaul, formerly working at the Deutsches Theater, and Balen Abbas, who left Iraq more than 2 years ago, perhaps, yeah, more than 2 years ago. Now they are making music here at the Göttingen-based Boat People projekt, translated Göttingen-based Boat People project. This collaborative theater and music group was founded in 2009 when the arrival of hundreds of refugees on Lampedusa got for the first time quite high on the news. People with and without refugee background broke in practice what it means to share this rich cultural but also highly troubling backgrounds and histories of flight, departure, loss, exploitation, border brutalities and arrival, as well as histories of hope, solidarity, friendship, and new forms of socialities. Here they are, and I would like to welcome you to your instruments. Perhaps we can have
is a stranger in a strange land, but his family he left home feels strange in their own country as well. It's called Hey.
Thanks a lot for this really wonderful and moving music. When I look around, I see quite a lot of faces where I think you can tell that your music talk to somehow. Thanks a lot.
Well, Sabine has already said a lot about the political background of the opening of the center. And we have actually deliberately set up the center with a global perspective and a broad, encompassing understanding of migration. And this is so for at least 2 or 3 reasons. First, it reflects the fact that migration is a global phenomenon. Current mobility, refugeeism, and migration can only be understood in the context of global political, economic, and social processes of change. And yet, and despite efforts over the last 20 years to conceptualize migration in a broader way, migration research is still mostly practiced within national frameworks. And I come from the discipline of international relations, and we very much conceive of international relations as relations among states. Second, if we fully acknowledge that migration is one of the truly global and transregional phenomena, this means that we have to also push academic thinking towards a transcendence of traditional approaches, which are firmly rooted in methodological nationalism. And third, the University of Göttingen, with its well-established regional foci and research networks on India, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, is ideally equipped to undertake a comparative and truly transregional approach to global migration. So we are addressing global dimensions and compare regional and national approaches, while at the same time shedding light on the impact of these forces on local societies and vice versa.
This cross and trans-regional approach, as well as a broad interdisciplinary composition of the center, as you have heard, 6 faculties and even more researchers, allows us for a broad perspective on migration. We hope to address, and we think we can do it, diverse types, forms, practices, and political categories of migration, such as forced and labor migration, high and low-skilled, climate or conflict-driven and induced migration, or migration for education, marriage, and love. What is even more exciting is that our nearly all world regions encompassing expertise here at the University of Göttingen makes it also possible to shed light on the different migration-related contexts, starting with the countries of origin over transit to the countries of destination, and hence shedding light on the translocal and transnational scapes and shapes that emerge with these mobilities and regimes of governance.
Let's now look at the different research themes for the center. The center, as you can see, is firmly based on 6 faculties. We call them Trägerfakultäten, or member faculties. The Faculty of Agricultural Sciences, Law, Humanities, Social Sciences, Faculty of Business and Economics, Theology, and the Max Planck Institute for the study of multi-religious and multi-ethnic societies, plus individual scholars from additional faculties who have not joined the center yet. Exactly, yet. So we are very happy indeed that we were able to gather such a broad variety of faculties. Thematically, we are looking at 4 distinct research areas which are partly disciplinary shaped, but offer platforms for interdisciplinary collaboration through common research agendas. These are policy regimes and migration governance, social, religious, cultural and environmental contexts, the political economy of migration, and migrants' perspectives and voices. Thematically, this broad disciplinary scope of the center allows us to develop a multi-level analysis approach addressing policy and legal regimes as much as diverse global, regional, national, and communal approaches to migration governance. So you are certainly wondering, how does that work in practice? And I will just give you a number of examples for projects that we are currently conducting. We have an interdisciplinary research network called RESPOND, which includes 14 partners and receives currently funding in the framework of the Horizon 2020 project by the EU. It systematically compares European governance approaches and government's responses in the area of migration management. The group investigates the strategies of border management and asylum and integration strategies in the source and destination countries and identifies incoherences with the aim of enhancing the governance capacity of the EU. So this would be one project clearly located in Research Area 1. And it has the participation of the Faculty of Humanities and the Faculty of Social Sciences and researchers from cultural anthropology and sociology. A second project called Social Construction of Border Regions actually takes on the perspective of migrants when it investigates the social and political practices connected to borders. It starts from the observation that border regimes have fundamentally changed. Borders that were relatively permeable have become nearly completely closed. And we are looking here at two border regimes, one between Morocco and the Spanish enclaves of Ceuta and Melilla, and the other one between Egypt and Israel. And the project then investigates how this changes the interaction among various groups. It focuses on the daily practices and interactions among police units, NGOs, smugglers, and local inhabitants. And one of the aims is to reconstruct knowledge and experiences with those divergent border regimes, from permeability to closure, from the individual perspectives of members of these groups, and actually how this change actually also changes the interactions among them. A different project looks at climate-induced migration and the projected consequences of climate change on particular communities. In the Pacific, a number of communities are threatened by relocation or have already experienced relocation from their home island. How this changes their attachment to their home islands, how it affects their feeling of belonging to a potentially transnational community, and ultimately influences decisions to migrate, is studied in this project. And this project is located in Research Area 4, which focuses on migrants' perspectives and voices. And the last project I would like to briefly introduce is attests also to our broad definition of migration, as we are not only looking at migrants more broadly, or at refugees more narrowly, but also at labor migration. So a project at the Faculty of Economics explores the migration of highly skilled workers, looks at the opportunities and challenges of expatriates as agent of knowledge transfer and innovation in multinational companies to identify the conditions under which different types of expatriates can better transfer knowledge and contribute to innovation in multinational companies. This project is located in Research Area 3 on the political economy of migration, but of course also has connections to Research Area 4 on migrants' perspectives and voices. Moreover, the methodology chosen in this project, surveys among highly skilled workers, can also benefit other projects conducted at the center. So as you can see, and I hope that you got a brief impression from what I've just said, the disciplinary composition allows us addressing macrostructural aspects of migration as well as fine-grained microanalytical research. Many of the research projects address more than one of these thematical clusters.
As you certainly got already the impression, migration as an ongoing challenge to society and the scientific knowledge production alike really needs a broad answer. Therefore, we try not only to foster new research collaborations within the University of Göttingen with an eye, but also having an eye on teaching and especially support of young scholars and researchers. We also want to intensify our outreach activities and knowledge transfer as an important mission of the University of Göttingen by the way of such classical formats as conference, workshops, and policy briefs and different papers. But we will be also inventive and think of new ways to translate our academic knowledge back into society.
Yeah, this is actually a slide on the international connections of the University of Göttingen, and which we hope to exploit fully for the center. So the University of Göttingen is already excellently connected internationally. And as you can see, the center has a number of reliable research networks, and the concentration of activities in migration research can be used to intensify our international networks, to increase exchange and collaboration. And by this, and this is what we sincerely hope also to achieve through this conference, we hope to gain a better cross and trans-regional understanding. So we are completely convinced that after this rich and inspiring conference, we will be able to add more exciting contacts and networks, and ultimately we hope that by building networks among centers of migration, we will also be able to build a new understanding on migration in a way that is indeed appropriate for migration as a global phenomenon.
Thank you, Anja. It was now a quite rough and first impression what we are heading for. But as we are just having this opening conference, we are really at the very beginning. Therefore, I'm very happy to welcome now Andreas Pott to you. Andreas Pott, as I just said already, is a board member of the Council of Migration, probably the biggest nationwide network of migration researchers in the country, and the director of the oldest institute for migration and integration research, the IMIS. And I think I'm not exaggerating to say migration and integration research in Germany is not thinkable somehow without the groundbreaking interventions of its former founding member, Klaus Bade, and the following researchers coming out of IMIS. And we are very happy that the IMIS is also located in Lower Saxony. That makes the collaborations with the IMIS even more easy. And we have already a couple of very fruitful ones, so I'm very happy to have you here, at least for this 15 minutes. And Andreas, here, please.
Dear Vice President, dear Sabine, dear Anja, Jetschke, dear colleagues, dear students, some students are around, I heard as well. Thank you very much for your initiative. I'm grateful to be part of this opening event of your new center. In fact, I feel honored to have been invited to say a few words. I will do so not only as director of IMIS and as the already mentioned board member of the Council for Migration, and as a founding member of the DEZIG, the new recently founded German Center on Migration, or for Migration and Integration Research, set up last year. I will speak to you also as someone who is absolutely convinced that we need more, stronger, more differentiated and better institutionalized migration research. The times, they are changing. Of course, Bob Dylan was right. The times are always changing, but sometimes they seem to be changing even more. This applies to migration issues in recent years. Nowadays, not only migration scholars would agree, migration matters. In many ways, migration is both the expression and product of change, as well as the producer of change. Migration changes life for individuals and groups, and it has the potential to bring about change in all the various social and regional contexts in which it occurs. Migration changes and shapes the demographic, but also the social-political landscape in many places, in many countries and regions, and at various geographical scales. Locally, in cities, regionally, for instance in Bavaria, or in Italy, Germany, in the European Union and its neighboring regions, in sub-Saharan Africa, or on a global level. Take, for instance, the current negotiations constructing the UN Global Compact for Migration, trying to strengthen the rights of migrants and refugees. Migration interconnects places and people, and it creates new realities everywhere. Migration triggers development both in the global north and in the global south. Integration processes or remigration processes, for example, not only produce integration, but conflict. This is one of the many paradoxes of migration processes. The more advanced integration processes are, and the more resources individuals have, the more likely they are to speak up, to fight against discrimination, racism, and inequality, to bring in new ideas, to change the rules of the game. The necessary renegotiation of norms, daily routines, and so on, almost naturally produces tensions, protests, resistance, and thereby development. These conflicts and their outcomes are as normal as migratory movements are in general. In other words, forms of migration are basic elements of the reproduction, of the daily reproduction of society. Yet, all too often, they are not perceived as such. Crossing international borders challenges and sometimes seems to question the nation-state order. The same is true for orders of belonging, questions of community or inclusion and exclusion. This makes migration a highly politicized issue. The power of migration encounters powers which try to control, to tame, to reorder it. Migration orders are, no surprise, highly contested. They always have been. Threatening political competitors with the closure of borders, or with the Richtlinien competence of the German Chancellor, or illegalizing NGO support for refugees in Hungary, are just three rather drastic recent events. Since about 2014, the transformative power of migration has again and strongly become visible, like in a burning lens. In this heated context into which the University of Göttingen gives birth to a new migration research center, I can only congratulate on this. We all know, and this has been mentioned too, this center is not the first of its kind, but it is one of those which have long been overdue. Why? Because we desperately need more university-based migration research in this country. Dedicated, independent, and high-profile research. For a long time, our institute at the University of Osnabrück has been the only interdisciplinary research institute firmly established as a university institute. The foundation of the IMES dates back to the early 1990s. 28 years ago, last century, Algerians would say. Since then, migration research has developed from a niche science to a widely acknowledged field. The research landscape has been expanding and diversifying. However, the more we know and find out about migration, the more we realize how little we actually know about this complex process, its changing conditions, forms, and consequences. That is why we need more research, the training of experts and stronger networks. Expert networks which can respond to the growing public and political demand of scientific knowledge and expertise on migration. We also need well-informed interventions into public and political debates more often. Interventions like those of Sabine, Hess and others here in Göttingen who have begun raising their strong and critical voices already years ago. And we need new research foci that help us transcend some of the typical biases of migration research. One has been mentioned in the introduction already, which is the strong focus on integration issues. New foci should also aim to overcome the prevailing Eurocentric or even Germany-centric perspective, a preoccupation with destination countries and receiving contexts, which is simply not adequate for global, translocal, and fluid phenomena like migration. And all of this, as we have been presented, the CeMig colleagues set out to do so. Particularly valuable appears, in fact, the global perspective. It invites to carry out globally comparative and trans-regional research. Speaking as a geographer, who I am as by training, I think it is extremely important to take the growing complexity of the global geography of migration seriously. The same holds for the strong regional variations of migration activity and migration control. Accounting for them will help to better understand the evolution and change of migration regimes. Having said this, another example may illustrate how adopting a global perspective can alter research questions. Popular interpretations state that we live in an age of migration, suggesting that today, in the 21st century, more people are on the move than before. When you talk to historians, which I regularly do in this institute, immediately first doubts occur. Pairing a temporal with a global perspective, the picture of ever-increasing migration crumbles. Looking at numbers and their regional distribution shows that the share of the population that migrates or has migrated is surprisingly low. Yes, in absolute numbers there are more migrants than before, but relating this growth to the growth of the world's population, surprisingly little migration can be observed. Since 1960, only 0.6% of the world's population has migrated, and this low share stays or has stayed stable. At least stable if you look at 5 years intervals. How can such a surprising finding be explained? Shouldn't we focus deliberately on immobility too? Shouldn't we pay more attention to the relationship between politics of mobilization and the politics of immobilization? Well, having praised your decision to emphasize the global perspective, I must admit that I'm slightly disappointed by the acronym you chose. This is because the global is indeed very implicit there. But then, what would have been a good alternative? Globic center? Or CeMig? I don't know. This doesn't sound very sexy. So please, again, forget again about this acronym doubt. Just a slight doubt. Having said all this, I should stress again that I'm very optimistic that CeMig will soon make substantial contributions to the field in one way or the other. Looking at the conference's program and the booklet makes you realize immediately these are not beginners. I found the kickoff program truly impressive. It demonstrates that Göttingen already has a remarkable local capacity of migration-related scholars, institutes and centers even, which CeMig will interlink even more. In addition, CeMig can already build on a strong regional and international network of migration researchers. This becomes quite obvious as well. And, if I may add this again, you already mentioned it, Sabine, with CeMig on board, Lower Saxony, Niedersachsen, has now quite a remarkable regional cluster of migration research institutes, Göttingen, Hildesheim, Oldenburg, and Osnabrück. As far as I know, such a research cluster in migration studies is exceptional in Germany. It will help us to deepen our collaboration to further push and develop this research field together. Where to go from here? What does the future hold for CeMig? Well, as indicated, many options and certainly many opportunities for inspiring and innovative research. I also like your plan alluded to it just now. You plan to develop and to establish a master program in migration studies. Maybe this is not an immediate plan, but in the longer future. But if you ever think about it, if you consider this, then I would like to encourage you to do so. I can tell from our own experience. We have set up a master's degree like this, a master's program, some 13 years ago, and it has been a success story. The numbers of applicants have ever since grown. Nowadays, there are about 350 applicants who we have to select from for 30 places per year. So it's a highly competitive selection process, which allows us to find very eager students, and teaching these students and working with them together is very stimulating, very rewarding, and we benefit a lot from them. And by running the program, we produce PhD students as well at the same time. My last remark, to make a center like CeMig a longer-lasting success, a certain institutional stability is indispensable. Successful research projects and cutting-edge publications are essential too, but without a strong, reliable and sustainable institutional structure, it will prove difficult to maintain both independent and critical knowledge production, which is exactly what we need in these turbulent political times. Thus, it is good to know that the Universität Göttingen supports this endeavor. I wish you all good luck for the forthcoming years. May CeMig become a strong knot in a nourishing network. Thank you, and enjoy the conference.
Thanks a lot, Andreas Pott, for these inspiring remarks, and hopefully we will meet us in some of these interesting and inspiring knots you were pointing at. But now let me welcome to you Vice President Caspar-Hehne. She just arrived. Thanks a lot. We are very glad that you could make it to come to us, as the presidency here of the university has been highly supportive to us from the very beginning, and we appreciated very much your strong support in this institutionalizing process and advice how to set it up. So therefore, please have the microphone.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just left a retreat with a president and with a vice president, so they are still working on the excellent strategy. But I was allowed to come here to to welcome you. Yeah. Okay. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and distinguished guests, it is with great pleasure that I warmly welcome you to the opening conference of the Center for Global Migration Studies at the University of Göttingen. I'm particularly pleased to welcome all our guests and speakers. I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Carlos Sandoval Garcia, Professor Dr. George Eugene Fouron, Dr. Mulki Al-Sharmani, and Professor Dr. Stephen Wajtowek is not yet here, but here he is. Yeah, here he is. Yeah. So, very welcome to you all. You will be the panelists in a minute or in 5 minutes, and so thank you so much for participating here. I'm also glad that representatives from important institutions of migration research from Oxford, Ghent, and Osnabrück, amongst others, have come here today, as well as colleagues from the U4 network and from the Max Planck Institute for the Study of Religious and Ethnic Diversity. And also those who have traveled such a long way, for example, from New York, Bangkok, San Jose in Costa Rica, or Hamilton, New Zealand. It is my pleasure to celebrate with you the foundation of the Center for Global Migration Studies. The Presidential Board of the University has supported this center from the very beginning and from the heart. And the day, just one day after the World Refugee Day, couldn't have been more fitting to open such a migration center with a global perspective. We just have heard again that the number of people on the move, fleeing war and terror and environmental devastation, to name just a few reasons, is still rising on a global scale. On the other hand, when we follow the news from the US to Europe, we also have to realize that political solutions are highly controversial and polarize the societies involved. Without any exaggeration, migration is surely one of the most challenging and complex issues of the 21st century. And society is looking for solutions to meet the challenges that the integration of growing number of people on the move are posing. Profound expertise in the area of migration research is needed now, more than ever. Thereby, migration, as one of few undeniable, truly global phenomena, not only demands a global and trans-regional scientific perspective that encompasses the whole migration process, but also an interdisciplinary perspective. In this regard, the University of Göttingen provides an ideal environment for such an undertaking because of its foundational history as an Enlightenment university and because of its strong expertise on regions and outreaching international networks and activities. In this respect, we congratulate the members of the Center for Global Migration Studies for the initiative to bring together such a wide variety of faculties and disciplines as agricultural sciences, law, humanities, social sciences, business and economics, theology, as well as various scholars from additional faculties and the Max Planck Institute. The Göttingen campus brings together extraordinary expertise on regions and countries across the world that is unique to the landscape of migration research and departments in Germany. The center offers an ideal infrastructure to deepen the cross-regional and trans-regional exchange, and it invites innovative comparative endeavors. Furthermore, the center is also an ideal infrastructure for interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary debate. Additionally, CeMig offers consolidated teaching programs and promotes young academics. It offers a platform to initiate further cooperation in future research projects and with international network partners. Amongst the numerous activities, I especially want to highlight one important undertaking at CeMig: the development of a new format for knowledge transfer and the collaboration with stakeholders from civil society, politics, and business. This third mission is of uttermost significance for the University of Göttingen. In this respect, the research and teaching activities at CeMig are committed to the critical spirit of Göttingen University. Listening to the news, it is obvious that the topic of migration is highly politicized and utilized for various agendas. High-level basic research like the one at CeMig can contribute to this debate by enriching the perspective and pointing to the complexities. Insofar, CeMig scholars implement our university's mission by engaging in the critical reflection on political, social, and commercial interests of the day. When solid research is brought into dialogue with politics and the public, it can objectify emotionally charged and sometimes one-dimensional public debates. CeMig and the university as a whole are committed to utilize their strengths for the education of critical citizens. Research results can contribute to shaping a more humane, tolerant, and peaceful world. With these hopeful prospects in troubling times, I would like to end. I wish you a successful conference with stimulating presentations, fruitful exchanges with old and new colleagues, and fresh ideas for your future research projects. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for giving us these words. I think they're really precious and valuable because we are just about to start, and in a way we really are looking forward having the presidency as a supportive but also critical partner and to test the limits and the scope of what we can do with this CeMig structure. Now we have to fill it with flesh. So we are really looking forward to the next years and having the chance to enrich with this kind of critical research and thinking Göttingen University. Thanks a lot. For the closing remarks, I would like to use this like 5 seconds before we hand it over the microphone again to the two musicians to express my deep, deep gratitude to our coordinator who did a marvelous professional work coordinating this conference, and it was just, I nearly had anything to do, so thanks a lot, Jelka, for this great organization. But even if Jelka really was working hard, she was not working alone, and probably she wouldn't have done it alone. Therefore, let me say thanks to Leon, Fabian Kaspari, Helena Gables, Anso Wiegels and Philipp Hartung. I'm not sure if they're here around because most of the students' assistants are down and are waiting you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them. There are more of the students' assistants. Just let me shortly name them. It's Paul Moog, Ronja Niedenführ, Besmira Signani, Christopher Simon, Charlotte Dorn, Tuni Fuse, Golsander Wudi, Mira Lubraun, Anna-Lena and Katharina Bonin. Thanks a lot for all your precious time and work to make this thing possible. You don't know how much, backstage work is needed just to put together the maps, for example. So thanks a lot. Tomorrow we are not here. Tomorrow we are over there at the campus. You certainly will find the map and all information needed. But for tonight, we are not finished yet. Now we have the chance again to listen to 1 or 2 songs, and then the round table will start, and perhaps you can, move whereas we listen to the songs, and perhaps people will come more because we opened the event to the public. Thanks a lot for your time.